The Galactic Academy's surprise guest. The vast lecture hall of the Galactic Academy of Xenobiology hummed with anticipation. Students from 100 different species fidgeted in their seats, a kaleidoscope of alien forms ranging from crystalline entities to amorphous blobs of sentient plasma. Their excited chatter filled the air, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses. At the front of the hall, Professor Zixtakar, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin and 6 tentacle-like appendages, cleared his throat, or rather, vibrated his speech membranes. The sound reverberated through the room, instantly quieting the assembled students. Esteemed scholars of the galaxy, Zixtakar began, his voice translated into 100 different languages by the neural implants each student wore. Today marks a momentous occasion in the history of our institution. For the first time, we welcome a guest lecturer from a Class 12 Deathworld. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Deathworlds were the stuff of legend, planets so inhospitable that it seemed impossible for sentient life to evolve there. And a Class 12. That was off the charts, a world so dangerous it defied conventional classification. I implore you all to maintain your composure, Zixtakar continued, his skin flickering with patterns that conveyed both excitement and caution. Our guest is here under the protection of the Galactic Council's Sentient Rights Act. He poses no danger to any of you. A tentative tendril rose from the middle of the hall. Professor, squeaked Blocksmar, a gelatinous being from the gas giant Jupiter 9. I thought Class 12 Deathworlders were merely theoretical. How can one be here? Zixtakar's skin rippled with what passed for a smile among his species. An excellent question, Blocksmar. The answer stands just outside that door. He gestured to the entrance with 3 of his appendages. Students, please welcome Professor Alexander Donovan of Earth. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and a hush fell over the lecture hall. In walked a creature that seemed both mundane and terrifying in its simplicity. It stood on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and a round head perched atop a sturdy torso. Its skin was a pale pink, with patches of darker pigmentation on its face and arms. A mop of dark fibers, hair, some of the more knowledgeable students realized, adorned its head. But it was the eyes that caught everyone's attention. 2 piercing blue orbs that scanned the room with an intensity that made several students instinctively recoil. Those eyes seemed to hold depths of knowledge, curiosity, and something else, a hardness that spoke of struggles beyond imagining. Greetings, citizens of the galaxy, the human said, its voice deep and resonant. I'm Professor Alexander Donovan, and I'm here to tell you about my homeworld, Earth. A brave student near the front, a silicon-based life form named Kresks, raised a crystalline appendage. Professor Donovan, is it true that your world is constantly trying to kill you? A chuckle escaped the human's lips, a sound that sent shivers through many of the assembled aliens. Well, Kresks, may I call you Kresks? That's a bit of an exaggeration. Earth isn't actively trying to kill us. Most of the time. This statement, clearly meant to reassure, had the opposite effect. Murmurs of disbelief and fear rippled through the audience. Perhaps, Zixtakar interjected, his skin pulsing with calming patterns. You could start by explaining what makes Earth a Class 12 Deathworld, Professor Donovan. Of course. Alexander nodded. He moved to the center of the stage, and with a few taps on his wrist device, a holographic image of Earth appeared above him. The blue and green sphere, swirled with white clouds, looked deceptively peaceful. At first glance, Earth might not seem so different from many of your homeworlds, Alexander began. We have vast oceans, towering mountains, lush forests, and sprawling deserts, but it's what you can't see that makes Earth unique. With another tap, the hologram zoomed in, showing the layers beneath Earth's surface. Our planet is alive in a way few others are. Beneath our feet, massive tectonic plates are in constant motion, grinding against each other, building pressure over centuries until the hologram suddenly erupted, showing a massive earthquake demolishing a city. Several students cried out in alarm. "That's what we call an earthquake," Alexander explained, his voice calm despite the destruction displayed. "They can level entire cities, trigger tsunamis, enormous waves that can swallow coastlines, and reshape the very face of our planet." He paused, letting the information sink in. The lecture hall was dead silent now. Every alien eye, or sensory organ, fixed on the human or the slowly rotating hologram of Earth. "But earthquakes are just the beginning," Alexander continued. "Those same tectonic forces create volcanoes." A hologram shifted, showing a mountain spewing molten rock and ash into the sky. "Imagine, if you will, the very blood of our planet bursting forth, raining fire and toxic gases across the land." Bloxner, the gelatinous student, quivered visibly. How do you survive such cataclysms?" Alexander's lips curved into what the aliens would later learn was a smile, though it did little to comfort them. "We adapt. We build structures to withstand the shaking, develop early warning systems, and when all else fails, we rebuild. Humanity is nothing if not resilient." "Surely," Zixtakar interjected, his skin flickering with a mix of fascination and horror. "These events must be rare occurrences." "Rare?" Alexander laughed, a sound that made several students flinch. "There are approximately 20 volcanoes erupting on Earth at any given time, and we experience about 20,000 earthquakes every year that are strong enough to be felt." The lecture hall erupted in a cacophony of shocked exclamations and fearful whistles. Alexander waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. "But let's move on to something a bit more commonplace." He tapped his wrist device again, and the hologram shifted to show Earth's atmosphere. "Let's talk about weather." For the next hour, Alexander regaled the increasingly horrified alien audience with tales of Earth's meteorological extremes. He described hurricanes that could encompass entire countries, tornadoes that could lift houses off the ground, blizzards that buried cities in snow, and droughts that turned fertile land to dust. "And let's not forget lightning," Alexander added, almost as an afterthought. The hologram crackled with electrical energy, bolts of electricity, hotter than the surface of the sun, that strike our planet over 8 million times a day. By this point, several students had excused themselves, their sensory organs overloaded by the barrage of terrifying information. Those who remained sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how any species could evolve, let alone thrive, in such an environment. Professor Donovan, Krisks, the silicon-based student, spoke up again, its crystalline form vibrating with what might have been fear or excitement. "You speak of these dangers so casually. How do humans cope with living in such constant peril?" Alexander's expression softened slightly. "That, Krisks, is the key to understanding humanity. We don't just cope, we thrive. These dangers have shaped us, pushed us to innovate, to explore, to reach for the stars." He gestured around the lecture hall. "It's why I'm standing here today, light years from my homeworld, sharing our story with you." He paused, his blue eyes scanning the alien faces before him. "But I've only scratched the surface. We haven't even touched on the dangers we've created ourselves, or the myriad of life forms on our planet that could kill you in an instant." A collective shudder ran through the audience. More. There was more. "I think," Zixtakar said, his skin pulsing with a complex pattern of colors, "that might be a good place to pause for today. Professor Donovan, I believe our students need time to process this information." Alexander nodded, that unsettling smile still on his face. "Of course, we've got plenty of time. After all, we've only covered the natural disasters. Wait until you hear about our cities, our technology, or our wildlife." As the human professor left the stage, the alien students sat in stunned silence. They had come expecting to learn about a curiosity, a theoretical extreme of planetary classification. Instead, they found themselves face to face with a being from a world that defied imagination. a world that made their own home planets seem like paradise in comparison. And yet, as they filed out of the lecture hall, each student felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. For in the eyes of Professor Alexander Donovan, they had seen something that both terrified and inspired them. A spark of indomitable will, of relentless curiosity, of sheer, stubborn determination to not just survive, but to conquer. They had seen humanity, and they would never look at the galaxy the same way again. Earth's natural hazards unveiled. The following day, the lecture hall was noticeably less crowded. Several species had opted to attend virtually, their holographic forms flickering in seats throughout the room. Professor Zixtakar's skin pulsed with concerned patterns as he surveyed the audience. "I understand yesterday's lecture was unsettling," he began, his translated voice soothing. "But I implore you to approach this opportunity with an open mind. The knowledge we gain here could revolutionize our understanding of evolutionary pressures and planetary science." A ripple of agreement passed through the crowd, though tension still hung in the air like a static charge. As if on cue, the doors slid open, and Professor Alexander Donovan strode in, his confident gait drawing all eyes in the room. "Good morning, class," he said, his deep voice carrying easily across the hall. "I hope you've all recovered from yesterday's introduction. Today, we're going to delve deeper into Earth's natural hazards." He tapped his wrist device, and the holographic display sprang to life, showing a cross-section of Earth's layers. "Let's start with the very bones of our world, plate tectonics." The hologram zoomed in, showing massive continental plates grinding against each other. Earth's crust is broken into several large plates that are in constant motion. This movement is imperceptibly slow most of the time, but when pressure builds up and suddenly releases. He trailed off as the hologram simulated a massive earthquake, the ground rippling like water. Krizix, the silicon-based student, raised a crystalline appendage. "Professor, how do humans predict such events? Surely you must have some way to avoid these earthquakes." Alexander's lips quirked in a half-smile. "Predict? We can't, not with any real accuracy. We can identify fault lines where earthquakes are more likely to occur, but as for when, that's still largely a mystery." A collective shudder ran through the audience. The idea of living on a planet with such unpredictable devastation was beyond comprehension for most. But that's not all. Alexander continued, seemingly oblivious to the growing discomfort in the room. "Remember those volcanoes I mentioned yesterday? Let's take a closer look." The hologram shifted to show a cutaway of a volcano. Volcanoes are essentially ruptures in Earth's crust that allow hot magma, ash, and gases to escape from below the surface. When they erupt, the hologram erupted in a spectacular display of molten rock and ash clouds. Several students recoiled, while others leaned in, morbidly fascinated. The largest volcanic eruptions can alter global climate patterns for years, Alexander explained. They spew ash and gases into the upper atmosphere, blocking sunlight and cooling the planet. One such eruption in 1815 led to what we call the year without a summer in 1816, causing worldwide crop failures and famine. Blocksnar, the gelatinous student, quivered anxiously. "But surely such events are extremely rare." Alexander chuckled, a sound that no longer seemed reassuring to the alien students. "Rare? There are about 1,500 potentially active volcanoes on Earth, not counting the continuous belt of volcanoes on the ocean floor. On average, about 50 to 60 of these erupt every year." The lecture hall fell into stunned silence. Zixtakar's skin flickered with patterns of disbelief. "Professor Donovan, are you saying that your species lives with the constant threat of fire raining from the sky?" "Not constant," Alexander clarified. "But it's a possibility we live with, yes. In fact, some of our most fertile agricultural regions are near volcanoes, thanks to the mineral-rich soil they create." He paused, noting the mix of horror and fascination on the alien faces before him. "But let's move on to something a bit more dynamic. Let's talk about our atmosphere. The hologram shifted again, now showing Earth's swirling weather patterns. Earth's atmosphere is a complex system, constantly in motion. This creates our weather, which can range from mild and pleasant to absolutely devastating. Alexander began to describe various weather phenomena, starting with rainstorms and working his way up to more extreme events. He explained how differences in air pressure could create winds strong enough to lift cars off the ground, how the collision of warm and cold air masses could spawn tornadoes that could level entire towns. And then there are hurricanes, he said, his voice taking on a tone of grim respect. The hologram displayed a massive swirling storm system. Imagine a storm the size of a small country, with winds strong enough to tear buildings apart, and storm surges that can submerge coastal cities. Krzyk's crystalline form vibrated with what might have been fear or excitement. How do humans survive such monstrous storms? Alexander's expression turned thoughtful. We've developed early warning systems, built structures to withstand high winds, and created evacuation protocols. But sometimes nature overwhelms our best efforts. He tapped his wrist device, and the hologram showed images of devastated cities in the aftermath of various natural disasters. The alien students watched in horrified fascination as Alexander explained each scene. A city reduced to rubble by an earthquake, another buried under volcanic ash, a third submerged by floodwaters. But here's the thing, Alexander said, his voice taking on a passionate edge. After each disaster, we rebuild, we learn, we adapt. Every catastrophe teaches us something new about our world and ourselves. HFY, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. Professor Donovan, forgive me, but I must ask, why? Why continue to live in such a hazardous environment? Surely your species has the technology to seek out more hospitable worlds. Alexander's eyes gleamed with an intensity that made several students lean back in their seats. Because Earth is our home, Professor HFY. It's where we evolved, where our history is written in the very rocks beneath our feet. Its challenges have shaped us, driven us to innovate, to explore, to reach for the stars. He gestured around the room. Look at where we are now. In a lecture hall light years from Earth, sharing knowledge with beings from across the galaxy. We're here because Earth taught us never to give up, never to stop pushing boundaries. A thoughtful silence fell over the room. The alien students began to see the human before them in a new light, not just as a curiosity from a death world, but as the product of unimaginable evolutionary pressures. But we've only scratched the surface. Alexander continued, breaking the silence. We haven't even touched on Earth's biological hazards yet. Blocksnar's gelatinous form rippled with apprehension. There's more. Alexander's laugh sent shivers through the audience. Oh yes, much more. Earth isn't just geologically active, it's teeming with life. And much of that life is just as dangerous as our planet's geology. He tapped his wrist device once more, and the hologram shifted to display a dizzying array of Earth's flora and fauna. From microscopic bacteria to enormous predators, from poisonous plants to parasites that can control their hosts' minds. Earth's biosphere is a complex web of life, much of which can be deadly to humans. The alien students watched in fascination and horror as Alexander described various dangerous species, venomous snakes that could kill with a single bite, plants whose mere touch could cause agonizing pain, microscopic organisms that could ravage the human body from within. And let's not forget the invisible threats. Alexander added, viruses and bacteria that can cause pandemics, spreading across the globe in a matter of weeks, thanks to our interconnected world. HFY's skin pulsed with patterns of disbelief. Professor Donovan, how does your species maintain any semblance of civilization under such constant threats? Alexander's expression turned serious. It's not easy, Professor. We've had our share of setbacks, of near misses. But each challenge we overcome makes us stronger, more resilient. We've developed medicine to combat diseases, technology to predict and mitigate natural disasters, and a stubborn determination to keep pushing forward no matter what the universe throws at us. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the lecture hall. But here's the most important thing to understand about humans. We're not content to merely survive. We strive to thrive, to explore, to understand. Every obstacle Earth puts in our path is not just a threat, but an opportunity to learn, to grow, to become better. The alien students sat in stunned silence, trying to process the information they'd received. The world Professor Donovan described seemed more like a nightmare than a cradle of intelligent life. And yet here he stood, living proof that not only could life evolve in such hostile conditions, but it could achieve spacefaring capabilities and join the galactic community. As the lecture drew to a close, Kresk raised its crystalline appendage once more. Professor Donovan, if I may ask, given all these dangers, what do humans do for fun? Alexander's face broke into a wide grin, a sight that no longer seemed as terrifying to the alien students. Ah, now that's an interesting question. You see, many of us seek out danger for entertainment. We climb mountains, dive into the deepest parts of our oceans, jump out of flying vehicles with nothing but a piece of fabric to slow our fall. We even create simulated dangers for amusement. The lecture hall erupted in a cacophony of shocked exclamations and confused queries. Alexander held up his hands, waiting for quiet to return. I know it sounds strange, he said, his voice filled with amusement. But that's who we are. We don't just endure the dangers of our world. We challenge them, push our limits, always striving to go further, higher, faster. As the students filed out of the lecture hall, their minds reeling from the day's revelations, a new sentiment began to emerge. It wasn't just fear or fascination anymore. It was a grudging respect. These humans, these Deathworlders, weren't just survivors. They were conquerors, shaped by the very forces that sought to destroy them. And as they dispersed to their various living quarters, each student couldn't help but wonder, what other surprises did these Earthlings have in store? What other impossibilities had they turned into mere challenges to be overcome? Little did they know, Professor Alexander Donovan was just getting started. The true nature of humanity, with all its complexities, contradictions, and indomitable spirit, was yet to be revealed. And when it was, it would shake the foundations of galactic society to its very core. The perils of human technology. The third day of Professor Alexander Donovan's lecture series dawned with a palpable tension in the air. The alien students filed into the lecture hall, a mix of trepidation and curiosity evident in their varied physiologies. Some had clearly been up all night, their species equivalent of dark circles under their eyes or sensory organs. Professor Zixtakar stood at the front, his skin flickering with calming patterns. I understand the past 2 days have been challenging, he began. But I urge you all to remember, knowledge, no matter how unsettling, is always valuable. The doors slid open, and Alexander strode in, a small smile playing on his lips. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all ready for today's topic, the dangers of human technology. A collective murmur rippled through the audience. After learning about the natural hazards of Earth, many students had assumed that human technology would be focused entirely on safety and protection. The idea that it could be a source of danger itself was unsettling. Alexander tapped his wrist device, and a holographic image of a city skyline appeared. Let's start with something fundamental to modern human civilization, our cities. A hologram zoomed in, showing the intricate networks of roads, buildings, and infrastructure. Human cities are marvels of engineering, home to millions of individuals. But they also concentrate risks in ways our ancestors never imagined. He gestured to the roads. Take transportation, for instance. Humans have developed vehicles that can travel at speeds our bodies were never designed to withstand. We call them cars. The hologram shifted to show sleek automobiles zipping along highways. These vehicles allow us to cover vast distances quickly, but they also introduce new dangers. Collisions at high speeds can be fatal, and with millions of these vehicles on our roads, accidents are a daily occurrence. Vloxnar, the gelatinous student, rippled with confusion. But surely, Professor, with your advanced technology, you can prevent such accidents. Alexander's smile turned wry. We've developed safety features, yes. Airbags, crumple zones, automatic braking systems. But the biggest variable in any vehicle is the driver. Human error, distraction, or simply bad decision-making causes most accidents. He paused, letting that sink in. And that's just ground transportation. Let me tell you about our aircraft. For the next half hour, Alexander detailed the various modes of human transportation: cars, trains, ships, and airplanes. He explained how each, while revolutionizing travel and commerce, also introduced new and often spectacular ways for humans to meet their demise. But transportation is just the beginning. Alexander continued, his tone almost cheerful. Let's talk about energy production. The hologram shifted to show various power plants, nuclear reactors, coal-fired stations, vast arrays of solar panels, and wind turbines. Humanity's need for energy is insatiable, and we've developed increasingly powerful and dangerous ways to produce it. He focused on the image of a nuclear power plant. This is perhaps our most controversial energy source. Nuclear fission can produce enormous amounts of clean energy, but it also creates radioactive waste that remains dangerous for thousands of years. And if something goes wrong, the hologram simulated a nuclear meltdown, showing the devastating spread of radiation. Several students recoiled in horror. We've had a few close calls, Alexander admitted. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. Each disaster taught us valuable lessons, but the risk never fully goes away. Krezks, the silicon-based student, raised a crystalline appendage. Professor, why would your species continue to use such dangerous technology? Alexander's eyes gleamed. Because the benefits outweigh the risks, Krezks. That's a recurring theme in human history. We push boundaries, take calculated risks, all in the name of progress. He moved on, discussing other technological dangers, from the mundane risks of household appliances to the existential threats posed by advanced weaponry. The alien students listened in stunned silence as Alexander casually described technologies capable of destroying entire cities, even rendering whole planets uninhabitable. But surely, Zixtakar interjected, his skin pulsing with alarm, your species has safeguards against such devastating weapons. Alexander's expression turned grave. We do. Treaties, fail-safes, mutual assured destruction. But the threat always looms. It's another aspect of life on Earth we've had to adapt to. He quickly moved on, shifting the topic to something that seemed, at first, less ominous. Let's talk about something you're all familiar with: information technology. The hologram displayed complex networks, streams of data flowing between nodes. Humans have created a global network we call the Internet. It's revolutionized how we communicate, work, and live. But it's also created new vulnerabilities. Alexander went on to explain the concepts of cybercrime, digital warfare, and the constant battle for information security. The alien students, many of whom came from societies where deception was biologically impossible or culturally unthinkable, struggled to comprehend the idea of using information as a weapon. And then there's artificial intelligence. Alexander continued, a hint of excitement creeping into his voice. We're on the cusp of creating machines that can think for themselves. The potential benefits are enormous, but so are the risks. An AI that surpasses human intelligence could be our greatest achievement, or our last. The lecture hall fell silent as the implications sank in. The aliens had assumed that any species surviving a death world would be united, focused solely on survival. The idea that humans not only thrived but continued to create new dangers for themselves was baffling. Professor Donovan, a multi-limbed student near the back, spoke up, its voice translated as a series of melodic tones. I don't understand. Why does your species continually create new threats to its own existence? Alexander's smile was both proud and a little sad. Because that's who we are. We're explorers, innovators, risk-takers. Every new technology, every scientific breakthrough, carries both promise and peril. But we push forward, always striving to expand our understanding, to push the boundaries of what's possible. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the lecture hall. Yes, our technology can be dangerous, but it's also allowed us to cure diseases, to extend our lifespans, to reach for the stars. The same science that created nuclear weapons also gave us clean energy and medical isotopes that save lives. The alien students absorbed this, their various physiologies conveying a mix of emotions, fear, fascination, and a growing respect for the resilience and daring of humanity. But there's one more aspect of human technology we need to discuss, Alexander said, his tone turning serious. Perhaps the most pervasive and insidious danger we face. The hologram shifted once more, this time showing images of pollution, smog-choked cities, plastic-filled oceans, clear-cut forests. In our drive for progress, we've changed our planet in ways we're only beginning to understand. Climate change, pollution, habitat destruction. We're altering the very world that shaped us. For the first time, a note of genuine concern entered Alexander's voice. This is perhaps our greatest challenge yet. Not a sudden catastrophe we can rally against, but a slow-moving crisis of our own making. Zixtakar's skin pulsed with patterns of deep concern. Surely, Professor, your species is taking steps to address this threat. Alexander nodded, his expression a mix of determination and worry. We are. But it's a complex problem, intertwined with our economies, our way of life. Change is happening, but slowly. Too slowly, some would argue. He straightened, his voice regaining its confident tone. But if there's one thing you should take away from these lectures, it's this. Humanity doesn't give up. We've faced extinction-level events before. We've stared into the abyss of our own destruction, and we've always found a way forward. As the lecture drew to a close, the alien students sat in contemplative silence. The world Alexander described seemed impossibly dangerous, a planet where even the technology meant to make life easier could turn deadly in an instant. But something else was becoming clear too. These humans, these Deathworlders, weren't just surviving. They were driving themselves forward, constantly innovating, taking risks that seemed insane to the alien students' sensibilities. As they filed out of the lecture hall, the students found themselves discussing not just the dangers Alexander had described, but the incredible achievements of humanity. They had taken a world actively trying to kill them, and not only survived but thrived, reaching out into the stars. Kurzix lingered behind, approaching Alexander as he packed up his materials. Professor, the crystalline being vibrated hesitantly. I must admit, I find your species both terrifying and inspiring. How do you do it? How do you live with such constant danger? Alexander's smile was warm, his blue eyes twinkling with an indomitable spirit that Kurzix was beginning to recognize as uniquely human. We don't just live with it, Kurzix. We challenge it. We see every obstacle as an opportunity to grow, to become better. That's the secret of humanity. We're at our best when things are at their worst. As Kurzix processed this, Alexander added with a chuckle, and just wait until tomorrow's lecture. We haven't even gotten to the really interesting stuff yet. The crystalline student vibrated with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. What could possibly be more interesting than what they'd learned so far? As Kurzix left the lecture hall, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same once humanity fully emerged onto the cosmic stage. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, other civilizations were about to learn just what it meant to coexist with a species forged in the crucible of a death world. The age of humanity was just beginning. Earth's biological threats. The fourth day of Professor Alexander Donovan's lecture series arrived, and the alien students filed into the hall with a mixture of dread and fascination. Many had spent the night discussing the previous lectures, trying to wrap their various sensory organs around the concept of a species that not only survived but thrived amidst such constant peril. Professor Zikstekar stood at the front, his skin flickering with patterns that seemed to convey both excitement and apprehension. Students, today's lecture promises to be enlightening. Please remember that knowledge, no matter how disturbing, is the foundation of understanding. The doors slid open, and Alexander strode in, a glint in his eye that the alien students were beginning to recognize as uniquely human. Good morning, class. Today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, the biological threats of Earth. He tapped his wrist device, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing a dizzying array of Earth's life forms. Earth isn't just geologically active or technologically dangerous. It's also a biological battleground, teeming with life forms that have evolved alongside us, many of which see us as either food or competition. The alien students leaned forward, their various sensory appendages focused intently on the display. Let's start small. Alexander began, zooming the hologram in to show microscopic organisms. These are bacteria and viruses, some of the simplest life forms on Earth. They're also some of the deadliest. He went on to explain how these microscopic organisms could invade the human body, causing diseases that had shaped the course of human history. He described pandemics that had wiped out significant portions of the population, from the Black Death to the Spanish flu. But surely, Blocksmar interjected, its gelatinous form quivering. With your advanced technology, such tiny organisms no longer pose a threat. Alexander's laugh sent shivers through the audience. Oh, if only it were that simple. You see, these organisms evolved just as we do. As we develop new ways to fight them, they develop new ways to fight us. It's an endless arms race at the microscopic level. He went on to explain the concept of antibiotic resistance, describing how human medicine was in a constant battle to stay ahead of evolving pathogens. And that's just the invisible threats. Alexander continued, his tone almost cheerful. Let's move on to something a bit larger. The hologram shifted to display a variety of plants. Earth's flora can be just as dangerous as its fauna. We have plants that can cause severe allergic reactions, others that are lethally poisonous if ingested, and some that can cause excruciating pain with a single touch. He described various dangerous plants, from the deadly nightshade to the gympie tree of Australia, whose sting was so painful it had driven people to suicide. But plants are stationary. Alexander added with a grin. They can't chase you down. Animals, on the other hand. The hologram shifted again, this time showing a parade of Earth's most dangerous creatures. Alexander described venomous snakes that could kill with a single bite, massive predators that could easily overpower a human, and seemingly innocuous creatures that harbored deadly surprises. Take the box jellyfish, for instance, he said, zooming in on a small, transparent creature. It's nearly invisible in water, and its venom is so potent it can kill a human in minutes. Or the inland tapir, a snake whose venom is potent enough to kill 100 people with a single bite. The alien students listened in horrified fascination as Alexander catalogued Earth's deadly menagerie. From the tiny but lethal blue-ringed octopus to the massive saltwater crocodile, it seemed Earth had perfected the art of creating deadly creatures. But here's the truly fascinating part, Alexander said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Humans don't just avoid these creatures. We study them. We learn from them. Some of our most potent medicines have been derived from the very venoms that evolved to kill us. Kruzix raised a crystalline appendage. Professor, how do humans coexist with such dangerous life forms? Surely you must live in completely sealed environments. Alexander chuckled. Not at all. In fact, many humans seek out these dangerous creatures. We have scientists who spend their lives studying venomous snakes, marine biologists who dive with sharks, entomologists who let themselves be stung by painful insects to study the effects. The lecture hall erupted in a cacophony of shocked exclamations. Alexander waited for the noise to die down before continuing. You see, that's a fundamental aspect of human nature. We don't just endure danger. We study it. We challenge it. We even seek it out. It's how we've survived and thrived on our death world. He paused, his expression turning more serious. But there's one more biological threat we need to discuss, perhaps the most significant of all. The hologram shifted once more, this time showing the human silhouette. The greatest biological threat on Earth is us. For the next hour, Alexander detailed the ways in which humans posed a danger to themselves and their environment. He described wars that had devastated entire continents, ideologies that had led to mass extinctions, and the ongoing threat of human-induced climate change. We are our own worst enemy, Alexander said, his voice tinged with a mix of pride and regret. Our intelligence, our adaptability, our drive to conquer and expand. These traits that have allowed us to survive on our death world also push us to the brink of self-destruction. The alien students sat in stunned silence, trying to comprehend a species that was simultaneously so resilient and so self-destructive. But Alexander continued, his tone brightening. That same capacity for destruction also gives us an unparalleled ability to create, to innovate, to solve problems. Every challenge we've faced, every threat we've encountered, has pushed us to become better, smarter, more adaptable. He gestured around the lecture hall. Look at where we are now. We've gone from cowering in caves, terrified of the dark, to exploring the cosmos. We've taken the very forces that threaten to destroy us and harnessed them to propel us to the stars. As the lecture drew to a close, Zixtakar's skin pulsed with complex patterns of awe and concern. Professor Donovan, I must ask, given all these dangers, how has your species not only survived but achieved spacefaring capabilities? Alexander's smile was proud, almost fierce. Because that's who we are, Professor. We're survivors, explorers, innovators. Every obstacle is a challenge to be overcome. Every danger is an opportunity to grow stronger. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the alien students. And that, class, is the key to understanding humanity. We don't just adapt to our environment. We adapt our environment to us. When faced with a problem, we don't ask, can we solve this? We ask, how quickly can we solve this? As the students filed out of the lecture hall, their minds reeling from the day's revelations, a new sentiment began to emerge. It wasn't just fear or fascination anymore. It was a grudging respect, even admiration. These humans, these Deathworlders, weren't just survivors. They were conquerors, shaped by the very forces that sought to destroy them. They had taken a world that seemed designed to kill them and turned it into the cradle of a spacefaring civilization. And as the alien students dispersed, discussing the lecture in excited whispers and electromagnetic pulses, they couldn't help but wonder, what would happen when humanity fully emerged onto the galactic stage? What wonders and what dangers would they bring with them? Little did they know, Professor Alexander Donovan had saved the most shocking revelations for last. The true nature of humanity, with all its contradictions, its indomitable spirit, and its potential to reshape the very face of the galaxy, was yet to be revealed. And when it was, it would change everything. The human perspective and galactic implications. The final day of Professor Alexander Donovan's lecture series arrived with an air of anticipation that was almost palpable. The alien students filed into the hall, their various appendages and sensory organs twitching with excitement and trepidation. Even Professor Zixtakar seemed on edge, his skin flickering with rapid patterns of anticipation. As Alexander walked in, the room fell into an expectant hush. He smiled, his blue eyes scanning the audience with an intensity that had become familiar to the students over the past week. "Good morning, class," he began, his deep voice carrying easily across the hall. "Today we're going to tie everything together. We're going to talk about the human perspective on all we've discussed and what it means for the galaxy at large. He activated his holographic display, showing a montage of images from the previous lectures: natural disasters, technological marvels, deadly creatures, and scenes of human triumph over adversity. Over the past week, I've told you about the dangers of Earth. I've described a world that seems hell-bent on destroying its inhabitants, a planet where danger lurks around every corner. But today, I want to tell you what it means to be human in the face of all this. Alexander's expression turned thoughtful. You see, to a human, Earth isn't a death world. It's home. It's the crucible that forged us, the challenges that shaped us. Every danger I've described isn't just a threat. It's an opportunity. He gestured to the image of a volcano. When we see a volcano, we don't just see destruction. We see a chance to understand the forces that shape our world. We climb these mountains of fire, not because it's safe, but because it's there. The hologram shifted to show scenes of natural disasters and human response efforts. When disaster strikes, we don't cower. We rally. We rush towards danger to help others, often at great personal risk. It's not just altruism, it's who we are. We're at our best when things are at their worst. Krezix raised a crystalline appendage. But Professor, surely this constant struggle must be exhausting. How do humans maintain their spirit in the face of such adversity? Alexander's smile widened. An excellent question, Krezix. The answer is simple. We don't just endure, we thrive on challenge. Humans have an innate need to push boundaries, to explore the unknown, to test our limits. He tapped his wrist device, and the hologram showed scenes of human achievements: the first flight, the moon landing, deep-sea exploration. Every challenge we overcome makes us stronger, smarter, more adaptable. We see the impossible not as a barrier, but as a dare. Tell a human something can't be done, and we'll move heaven and earth to prove you wrong. The alien students listened in rapt attention, their earlier fear giving way to a mix of awe and fascination. But it's not just about overcoming physical challenges. Alexander continued. Our harsh environment has shaped our minds, our societies, our very way of thinking. He went on to explain how Earth's dangers had driven human innovation, fostered cooperation, and fueled an insatiable curiosity about the world around them. We've had to be creative to survive, to work together in the face of common threats. This has led to incredible advancements in science, technology, medicine, but it's also given us art, music, literature, ways to express our experiences, to find beauty even in the harshest conditions. Alexander's tone turned more serious. However, this drive, this relentless push to overcome and achieve, it's a double-edged sword. The same traits that allow us to survive on a death world can make us challenging neighbors. The hologram shifted to show scenes of human conflicts, environmental destruction, and technological risks. We're competitive, often to a fault. We can be aggressive, territorial. Our drive to explore and expand can sometimes blind us to the consequences of our actions. We've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, in our history. A murmur of unease rippled through the alien audience. But, Alexander continued, his voice filled with conviction, we learn, we adapt, we strive to be better. For every misstep, there's a leap forward. For every conflict, a new alliance. For every problem we create, we work tirelessly to find a solution. He paused, letting his words sink in. And that, class, is what humanity brings to the galactic stage. We're problem solvers, innovators, explorers. We've taken a world that by all rights should have killed us 1,000 times over, and we've turned it into the launchpad for a spacefaring civilization. The hologram now showed images of human space exploration, from early rockets to advanced starships. We come to the stars not just with technology, but with an indomitable spirit forged in the fires of adversity. We bring with us the lessons learned from countless challenges overcome, the strength gained from facing our own extinction, and saying, "Not today." Alexander's gaze swept across the lecture hall, meeting the eyes and sensory organs of the alien students. "Yes, we're dangerous. We're unpredictable. We take risks that might seem insane to other species. But we're also the ones you want on your side when the impossible needs to be done." He smiled, a mixture of pride and humility. "We don't claim to be the strongest, the smartest, or the most advanced species in the galaxy. But I can promise you this: we're the ones who will never, ever give up. No matter the odds, no matter the danger, humanity will always find a way forward." The lecture hall fell into a profound silence as the alien students absorbed this final revelation. They had come expecting to learn about a curiosity, a quirk of galactic evolution. Instead, they found themselves face to face with a species that defied expectation at every turn. Professor Zixtakar's skin pulsed with complex patterns of awe and concern. "Professor Donovan, I must ask, what do you think this means for the future of galactic society?" Alexander's expression turned thoughtful. "Honestly, Professor, I think it means change. Humanity isn't content with the status quo. We're always pushing forward, always asking, what's next? We'll bring that drive, that curiosity, that relentless innovation to the galactic stage." He paused, his blue eyes twinkling. "But we'll also bring our capacity for compassion, for cooperation in the face of adversity. We've learned the hard way that we're stronger together than apart. I believe humanity has the potential to be a unifying force in the galaxy, bridging divides and finding common ground even among the most diverse species." As the lecture drew to a close, the alien students found themselves grappling with conflicting emotions. The humans were terrifying. Yes, a species forged in conditions that seemed designed to eradicate life. But they were also inspiring, a testament to the power of intelligence, adaptability, and sheer determination. Krisk approached Alexander as the other students filed out, still buzzing with excitement and speculation. "Professor," the crystalline being vibrated hesitantly, "after everything you've told us, are you not afraid of what the future might hold?" Alexander's laugh was warm, filled with an optimism that seemed to defy logic given everything he'd described over the past week. "Afraid? No, Krisk. Cautious, yes. Aware of the challenges, certainly. But afraid? Never. Fear is a tool, a warning system, but it's not a way of life." He placed a hand gently on one of Krisk's crystalline appendages. "The future is unknown, filled with dangers we can't even imagine yet, but that's what makes it exciting. Every problem is a puzzle waiting to be solved, every danger an opportunity to grow stronger." As Krisk processed this, Alexander added with a wink, "Besides, if there's one thing you should have learned this week, it's this: humans are at their best when the odds are against them. Whatever the future holds, we'll face it head-on, and we'll do it with a smile." As the crystalline student left the lecture hall, vibrating with a mix of emotions it couldn't quite name, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity was coming, bringing with them the indomitable spirit of a species that had stared extinction in the face countless times and always found a way to smile back. The age of humanity was dawning, and the cosmos held its breath in anticipation. What wonders and what challenges would these Deathworlders bring to the stars? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: it was going to be one hell of a ride.